partake not in the meat, nor the breast milk, nor the ovum of any creature with a face. Couldn't save them.
Welcome, one and all. We are gathered together once again to discuss Quantum Leap, the 2022 revival series, up to episode 14, this one entitled S.O.S. If you are new here or have just otherwise forgotten, there will be spoilers ahead. If that's not your thing, please duck out now and check back later. Otherwise, consider yourself warned. Now on with the show. So before I get into the actual breakdown of the episode itself, there are a couple of issues I would like to just touch on. If you've been following along, you do remember that this series has taken far too many breaks in my opinion, and that's really killed the momentum. We're now back 2 episodes in a row, and I think the momentum is starting to build. These are 2 of my favorite types of Quantum Leap episodes, and they are different from each other. Last week was a family affair, low-stakes situation, dealing with a family reconciling, coming together, all of that stuff. This episode has a personal connection, not to the Leaper, Ben, but to Addison. I like Quantum Leap stories where they deal with a physical person that's connected to the program, but if they do it too often, it seems like overkill. So hopefully they're not going back to this well too much. The actual overarching storyline was of bigger import and had potential to be a global catastrophe. I do like when they add those things in, again, time to time. I don't want that to be the ongoing narrative. Also, the overall storyline was forwarded. On to my second major sort of problem here, and that is the Janice connection. And I happen to believe this might be related to the fact that they commissioned new episodes and they had to slot things in, because we spent all that time early on building up the connection to Janice. She would have more answers. They finally connected with her, brought her into the program, had her help for half an episode, and now 2 weeks in a row, she's just completely absent from the proceedings. And I have to think this has something to do with those new episodes. They had an overarching storyline already ready to go before the season was given more episodes, and they may have slotted later episodes into earlier positions to not draw things out too far, and by doing so, they may have put episodes prior to finding Janice earlier into the storyline, or they really didn't have anything for her to do yet, and that's coming in season 2. And the whole on-again, off-again situation of Ziggy running slowly, it was touched upon a few episodes ago, and then it wasn't really mentioned again, and they act like it's been happening continuously, and I think there just might be a bit of a disconnect because of the additional episodes. So Ben finds himself in a very precarious situation. Last episode, he was kind of in his element. This episode, no. He is in the midst of a war game on a Navy vessel in 1989. However, upon his leaping into the situation, he doesn't know this is a war game, and he is personally feeling that he's in the middle of a war. He doesn't have the military training of Addison, and it takes a while for Addison to find him because of the aforementioned issues with Ziggy, so we have to see him going through this on his own. Luckily, he's not the number 1 person in charge. He's not the captain. He's not an admiral. He's not even the XO. He is 3rd in command, but that's still a pretty significant position for him, and he's able to barely squeak his way through by kind of fumbling around a little bit. We get into the actual point of the episode a little later on when Addison finally shows up. This is an actual war game taking place in 1989. This is a crucial point in history. There was a conflict that was narrowly avoided. In doing so, her father was kind of dishonorably discharged, and that led to more issues with the family. Because it turns out he made a call that doomed a bunch of American naval officers on a submarine that was lost in the area. Throughout this episode, we learned that wasn't the case. It was actually the captain who made the bad call, and he decided to fall on his sword, for lack of a better term, and take the blame in order for this captain, who is basically a legendary figure in naval history, to go out on a high note. That being said, I did like the little struggle that was going on here, and it kind of mirrors what I think they're trying to do in Star Trek Picard right now with their Crimson Tide naval situation. So it's kind of interesting both of these things ended up coming out at a simultaneous time. I really liked Brandon Routh in this role, and I'm very much enjoying the fact that they're getting so many science fiction or science fiction adjacent actors in this show. It's lending a little bit more to it, making it feel a little more weighted in the realms of a prestige show than I think just a normal sci-fi show would have. And that makes sense because this is Quantum Leap after all, and he did a great job. I think they may have cast him primarily because, well, A, he's a fantastic actor, and B, he's got the same damn chin as Addison, so it really actually played up the fact that they are related. Go on to learn here that this naval exercise could potentially be the inciting factor for World War III if not done correctly. Ben is able to kind of sway things and move things off from the original timeline to rescue the downed sub and rescue the crew who died in the original timeline. However, in doing so, he's kind of maneuvered things a little bit more towards the war side. So instead of just rescuing these few lost souls, which, yes, was a bad thing in history, and repairing the reputation of Addison's father, he may have in fact doomed the entire planet by inciting a war between the United States and China because the tensions were already frayed. While they thought a Chinese submarine had actually shot a torpedo and damaged their boat, in fact, it turns out that this was an accident. They had laid some mines in order to kind of keep the Americans out of their water. Some of those mines had escaped and floated out into open waters, and this mine is actually what exploded on impact with the hull, damaging the ship. Had the ship retaliated, which the captain wanted to do, that would have basically been a declaration of war, and everything would have gone to hell. Luckily, Ben and Addison are finally able to do this correctly. Ben is able to talk the XO, Addison's father, into helping. It would basically be tantamount to mutiny. They're able to get away. They go up to the bridge, and last minute, they're able to talk the captain down. This part probably isn't actually plausible in reality. A lot of these things need to be suspended in television and movies, so I'm not going to fault that too much. It was a great scene. The tension was there, and it actually played in well with the overarching storyline. One thing I would like to add here, the quantum leap portions in the modern day actually played into the storyline overall. I really like that. This is the type of stuff I like to see the Quantum Leap project doing. Instead of going on their own side tangents, they're actually researching. They're coming up with stuff on their own. This is what I imagine was happening in the background in the original Quantum Leap. Whenever Al would come back and say, all right, we've gotten this information, we actually get to see it going on here with Ian and the other people at Project Quantum Leap. And we got to see Magic go off and have a side story that actually pertained back to this situation and gave a little more insight into both him and the world of Quantum Leap, because this world is not our world. There's differences, and especially this situation right here is different from what happened in our own world, because this class of ship doesn't actually exist in our world. It almost existed, but it was canceled at the last moment, meaning the Quantum Leap universe is not our universe. There was also another, I guess you could call it subplot going on, even though it really wasn't a subplot until the very end, where Ben kept speaking to a specific officer, a specific radio officer, never got to meet until the very last moment. I think they may have played it up just a little too much because I saw it coming from a mile away. The officer was either going to be one of two things, either a very important historical figure or someone related to the project, or the other Leaper. No, not Ian, as we learned in the last episode, but Leaper X, or Martinez from the future. This is an older version because he's got more grayed silver hair. So this Martinez had leapt into the situation, and he actually tells Ben right now, you know what, I think you actually helped my mission because I wouldn't have been able to accomplish nearly all of the things that you did in this situation because of the rank of the person I leapt into. Ben says, I have no idea what's going on here. What the heck's happening? And Martinez says, I know you don't know what's going on, and that's why I'm going to win, Ben. And then he immediately leaps away. We get to see the person Martinez had leapt into for a brief moment coming back completely confused. So again, I do like that aspect of it. We get to see how somebody is, at least briefly, after they're leapt out of. And then Ben leaps out as well into a lawyer for the start of next episode. Overall, I very much enjoyed the entirety of this episode. We got movement of the overarching storyline. We got a fantastic episode just in general. Take out all of the interconnected stuff and just put this episode by itself. The tension was good. The storyline was pretty good. The sets were good. Everything about the actual fun part of the leap was good. But we also had that little added touch of the interpersonal connection of Addison and her father. Now that Ben has changed history during this leap, I'm very interested to see what happens with Addison and her familial relationship. I hope we get to touch on that in the future because we didn't actually get to see the ramifications of it in this episode. We got a little more information on present day Magic because he met with his counterpart in the Chinese Navy, and that was also fascinating. So we got a lot of forward momentum, 2 episodes in a row, building that back up, and I just hope the trajectory continues because the show is finally starting to hit its stride again after a lot of starts and stops. What did you think of this episode? Do you think it was a step in the right direction? Were you bored by it? Are you just overall done with the show, or are you really enjoying it? Leave all your thoughts below. While you're down there, hit the like, share, subscribe, all of that fancy stuff. But until next time,